the attempted assassination of a former president, somehow makes this talk even more relevant today. The idea of how do we change our world? How do we resolve differences? How do we shift? And to do this, we're going to look at 5 songs, some a little bit more deeply than others. We're going to look at Help, followed by the song Revolution, which we will sing later. And then Across the Universe, Imagine, and Here Comes the Sun. Because each one of them has a message that we can build on and learn from about how to best navigate through difficult times when we can see and know that change isn't just needed or desired, but is here. And what's true, of course, is there's no such thing as stasis. We are always moving, always shifting. I don't know how it was for you, but I remember maybe a couple of years ago realizing that history didn't end in our time. That here I was thinking, oh, all the world wars are done, all the diseases are pretty much done, science has got it, the politics of the planet are for the most part pretty stable, and all of those dark, unenlightened ages are behind us. And it's almost like something went, no, 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 no. And here we are today with a time of incredible turmoil on our beautiful planet. Let's look at how each one of these songs can help us. We begin by looking at Help. As Peter so wisely shared earlier today, the reason John Lennon wrote this song is because he was feeling completely helpless. Now imagine this band. Why do you sing? Why do you play music? Because you want to share it. Why do you want to share it? Because you want people to sing along with you, and hopefully you'll become famous. And they'll love you for it. And of course, that's exactly what happened, and it comes at a cost. And in the case of the Beatles, it came at the cost of their own freedom. And so you hear these words about, my life has changed in so many ways. My independence has vanished in the haze. John Lennon himself called it a cry for help. And when we think in terms of something personal, something more local, or something global, the first thing we recognize is that we can't do it all ourselves. And so there's this cry for help, a cry for help me. It's almost as if that's the first step, is to recognize this is not working. I need help. So then we think, okay, let's see if we can find help. Where can we find answers? Where can we get clarity? Well, we get a clue about this in the song Revolution, which we will sing later. And this is one of those songs that isn't as well known, isn't as well, like it's not the song that people would go to when they want to sing along so much. The wisdom in it is extraordinary. You see, in verse 1, this idea of help, I'm going to go and ask for help. And the person says, well, we need a revolution. Imagine this is just almost like a discussion. Help. Okay, let's have a revolution. To which the person saying help says, okay, we all want to change the world. So then the discussion goes, well, it's evolution, it's part of human nature, part of the planet, that this is just going to happen. And you can feel the person saying help saying, okay, you haven't lost me yet. We all want to change the world. So revolution, evolution, I can acknowledge that there is an opportunity for change, and part of our natural evolution is to move forward. And then the person hears about destruction and says, no, you can count me out. Now, when Lennon wrote this originally, he wrote it without, and then kind of as a shadow you hear in. And that speaks a little bit to the idea of the confusion of how do you make a revolution? How do you make change? How do you evolve without destruction? But he stood by, you can count me out. Destruction does not work. And oh my goodness, are we not seeing that now? It is, as 2 or 3 years ago, when the planet seemed to be more or less stable, it was like, okay, destruction didn't work. We all agreed that it didn't work. Here we are. And then the person crying for help stands by, it's going to be all right. A powerful affirmation. It's going to be all right. So we see in verse 1 this agreement that change is something that is desired right now, but a disagreement about the method. Destruction is out. And we see an affirmation. It's going to be all right. It's a statement of trust that there is order somewhere in the midst of the mess. There's still a way to make this happen. Then we go to verse 2. And in verse 2, in our imaginary conversation, the person says, you say you got a real solution. We'd all love to see the plan. There's this longing for, I'm willing to hear your ideas. Let's see if we can come up with something so we can make this effective. Followed by, you ask me for a contribution. Well, I'm doing what I can. And maybe you have a hidden motive. Because now all of a sudden, money is coming into this. But if you want money for people with minds that hate, all I can tell you is you have to wait. If your motive is to drum up money to fund people who hate, then that is not the way, and I am not willing to support it either. And I'm convinced it's going to be all right. So now we have destruction, no. Financial hidden motives for greed, for power, no. Now what? You'll say you'll change the Constitution. We all want to change your head. The idea of changing the Constitution is changing the rules. It is changing, moving from perhaps something that is more liberal to something that is more restrictive, or maybe the other way around. And we're seeing some of that happen in our society right now with a clawback of some of the more liberal outlooks that we have in our laws. So if we can't do it with destruction and we can't do it with power and money and hatred, then maybe we can do it with the law and we can limit everyone in some way. Sometimes we think it's the institutions that are the problem. But what happens, and what we want to make sure we don't engage in, is trading one form of tyranny for another. What we want to guard against is becoming so stuck on one way that we end up being as much on one side as the others are on the other, as polarized. And here, at the very last, we get a hint as to what might work better. And that is to free your mind. To free your mind to be open to something different. And then he goes to what is perhaps one of the most confusing lines, which is, if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone, anyhow. Now, Mao Zedong was a person who was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party for many, many years. And the jury is so polarized about the benefit and the harm that this man brought to the country. Some of his programs led to the starvation of millions of people in China. And at the same time, he was instrumental in having China recognized as its own country. And one of the things that happened in the 60s was that people who appreciated the idea of communism started carrying, like card-carrying liberals almost, and they were called Maoists. And John Lennon actually really appreciated what Mao was trying to do, even if some of his policies and things that he did didn't work quite the way that he wanted. But what I think John Lennon was trying to say is, whether it's card-carrying Maoist, whether it's card-carrying liberal, whether it's card-carrying conservative, whether it's what are the different things that the things that separate us, card-carrying LGBTQ versus cis and straight. Anytime we get to a place where we are so stuck in our own card-carryingness, we end up creating such a silo that we cannot communicate effectively with people who are other than we are. And I think that's his message, is that if you are carrying something that says, I am fiercely this and this only, that we are actually alienating ourselves from the other, and we're not going to be able to effectively make change. So in Revolution, the song Revolution, we don't want destruction. We don't want hatred. We don't want polarization that silos us so much that we can't have a conversation. It's almost as if it's taunting us taunting the other to take aim at us because we're so different. Instead, we want to look for the places where we can identify similarities. And always, don't we want to know it's all right? Whenever you're in a place of war, we are right. The definition of me being right means that you must be wrong. Instead of an either or, the goal is to look for both and to trust that it's all going to be all right. Okay, moving on. Another great song. Across the Universe. Just listen to the lyrics of this. Words are flying out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither and slip across the universe. In this first verse, we get a sense of confusion. Words flying, slithering, slipping, trying to reach for answers and not being able to grab onto them. Then that's followed by pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my opened mind, possessing and caressing me. Noticing the sorrow, but noticing that there's joy possible in my opened mind where I can see it all and accept it all. And again, another affirmation, nothing's going to change my world. Then it continues. Images of broken light dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander. It's so different. They meander like a restless wind. And then they tumble blindly. And yet, nothing is going to change my world. Haven't we all experienced that? That tumble and jumble of thoughts and words that we know that something's there and we can't quite touch it. To carry the universe thing a little further, you might say that they're nebulous. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But always it comes back to, nothing's going to change my world. A Sanskrit phrase. Glory to the shining remover of darkness. It's also a phrase that was said by the late Maharishi Mahesh Yogi about his own guru, Dev. And then we get to the optimistic part. Sounds of laughter, shades of life ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love, excuse me, shines around me like a million suns. Leads me on, calls me on across the universe. There's this sense of confusion, from confusion to laughter. And how do we get to that? How do we move from that slithering, sliding, tumbling, jumbling? With meditation, with affirmation, with nothing's going to change my world. I'm seeing all of this out there. Nothing is going to change my world. I'm willing to look and hear differently. And then I see the limitless, undying love that shines like a million suns. Oh, so beautiful. Have you ever thought about the fact that some of the biggest change agents in our world became change agents after they had been in prison? Gandhi, Mandela. I imagine that there are many who ended up going into prison because they were in that tumble-jumble place of destruction. And I think prison may have done them some good because it was a place where they could figure out what worked. They took time to be still because it was forced on them. Who knows? I'm making it up. But I do wonder about the value of the time that we take when we sit in a place of nothing's going to change my world. How can I find limitless, undying love in the midst of all of this? Okay, imagine another journey that we go on. 3 verses in Imagine, that's all. And the first one is global. Imagine there's no heaven Imagine there's no hell below us. Imagine that it's only sky. And because it's global, it's easy if you try. Easy if you try. Then we move to something that's a little bit harder. No countries. But it's still something that you can imagine. I mean, imagine that you're a bird looking down and you can recognize that the borders are man-made. So it's actually not that hard to imagine that there are no countries. And you can see the wisdom of doing that, because the promise of doing that is that we wouldn't have anything to kill each other for. And by the way, religion is probably the #1 killer of people, which objectively makes absolutely no sense. So imagine big. Imagine it's easy if you try, no heaven and hell. Imagine it isn't hard to do, no countries and no religion. And then it hits home. Imagine no possessions. This is about you. I wonder if you can. And yet it is in this place about you that the sense of sharing and unity and interconnectedness and brotherhood happen. So, we end our journey of change. I'm mindful of time, with another statement of hope. And that statement of hope is, here comes the sun. There are times, and some would say those times are now, when it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. When it seems like years since it's been here. Peace has been here. And yet, I encourage us all to take a little bit of comfort from the idea that we have been here for thousands of years. That we're still babies. That evolution will move us forward and call us from across the universe towards a place where images of broken light will now become the light of limitless, undying love. The help we need is not just from anybody. It's a revolution that begins with freeing our minds. It's an evolution that calls us to move across the universe, away from the jumble of thoughts, away from the jumble of words, and towards those images of broken light. Until we reach a place in our evolutionary journey, a place where limitless, undying love shines around us like a million suns. Move towards the light. Imagine. Here comes the sun. Don't you know? It's going to be all right. Bless you.
Today's meditation is going to be the song Imagination. So close your